Take a look at the world's busiest global hubs, like Atlanta International or Shanghai Pudong. To manage their massive flight volumes, these airports operate with 5 active runways, providing the redundancy needed for maintenance and heavy traffic. London Heathrow is Europe's busiest airport by passenger numbers, yet it has just 2 runways. For nearly 2 decades, those 2 strips of tarmac have operated at 100% capacity, handling roughly 1,300 flights every single day. Operating at the absolute physical limit leaves no room for error. A single patch of bad weather or a minor technical delay can ripple through the schedule. By 2050, combined passenger demand for London's airports is projected to reach 400 million per year, more than double current levels. If Heathrow cannot physically expand to meet that demand, it faces a permanent loss of flight routes and international connectivity to other European hubs. Without more space, the airport's ability to serve as a global gateway is effectively capped. Heathrow's current location dates back to 1819, long before the city expanded this far west. At the time, it was a quiet farming hamlet called Harmondsworth, where the rhythm of life revolved around the local countryside. During the Second World War, the British government seized this farmland and converted it into a Royal Air Force base. When the war ended in 1946, the land wasn't returned to the resident. Instead, the government repurposed the military strips for London's new civilian airport. Rapid commercial growth followed throughout the 1960s, locking the airport's location into place just as London's outer suburbs began rapidly exploding outward. Residential areas and schools were built right up against the airfield boundary. Because the airport was established out of wartime convenience rather than urban planning, it is now permanently landlocked. Today, Heathrow is engulfed on all sides by the very communities that are most vulnerable to the noise and pollution of any potential expansion. To avoid the constraints of the current site, former Mayor Boris Johnson proposed a radical alternative, building an entirely new 4-runway airport on reclaimed land in the Thames estuary. However, the Boris Island plan faced a major engineering hurdle similar to Japan's Kansai Airport. Since opening in 1994, Kansai has sunk 38 feet due to the compression of seabed clay, requiring constant, expensive maintenance to prevent flooding. An estuary airport in London would have faced the same long-term instability. Safety was another concern. The proposed site sat adjacent to the Isle of Grain, home to one of the world's largest liquefied natural gas terminals. National air traffic experts described it as one of the worst possible spots for an international airport path. A second proposal to expand Gatwick was also dismissed. While it sits 30 miles from London with more space to grow, the site is on a floodplain and lacks Heathrow's specific status as a transit hub for high-volume global trade. With the estuary plan and Gatwick both ruled out due to technical and economic flaws, the UK was forced back to the original problem, expanding Heathrow despite its geographic and environmental challenges. For 20 years, local residents have fought the expansion. A 3rd runway requires the total demolition of nearby villages and threatens to bring permanent noise pollution to West and Central London. The battle eventually moved from the streets to the courts. Opponents argued that increasing flight capacity would prevent the UK from meeting its obligations under the 2015 Paris Agreement, which aims to limit global temperature rises. This legal friction reached a peak in 2020 when the Court of Appeals ruled that the government's approval of the 3rd runway was illegal. The court found that ministers had failed to properly account for those strict climate commitments. This standoff has stalled the project 3 times since 2003. Each attempt at progress has been met with fresh litigation, pitting national economic goals against local and global environmental protections. In January 2025, to increase annual flight capacity by over 50%. The schematic shows the scale of the new infrastructure, a 3.5-kilometer runway to the northwest and a massive new terminal complex, Terminal 5X. Constructing these facilities requires moving beyond the current fence, demolishing existing buildings, leveling terrain, and rerouting power lines underground. While the airfield work is extensive, the most difficult part of the project isn't the new runway itself. It is the massive piece of civil engineering required to clear the path for the planes. The M25 motorway, one of Europe's most congested roads, sits directly in the path of the proposed runway. It currently handles both airport traffic and the main flow of vehicles circling London. The expansion requires engineers to shift this motorway 150 meters west. They must lower the roadway into a trench and enclose it in a reinforced tunnel beneath the new runway. This tunnel must support the weight of landing aircraft while vehicles pass underneath. Even with the 2025 approval, the project faces new obstacles. London's mayor, Sadiq Khan, has already consulted lawyers to challenge the expansion, signaling that the legal battles of the last 20 years are likely to continue. After 20 years of political gridlock, the UK's aviation future rests on a $65 billion gamble. Whether the government can actually tunnel under its busiest highway and deliver the runway by 2035 remains the central question for London's global connectivity.